excited to be here, and I sometimes have to pinch myself that I get to put on a microphone and talk. So I want to start from the very beginning. I'm here to talk about my story in becoming a woman-owned enterprise, but in order to do so, I want to start at the beginning. And so I love that you're eating lunch, because my story starts at eating lunch. So when I was 18, I was graduating from college, from high school. That would have been a feat in itself. So I was graduating from high school, and there's this mother-daughter tea that happens in our community. And I was at this tea with my mom, and there was a successful woman speaking at the tea, and she was telling us about how we could be successful in our careers. And I remember, I was a teenager, so I was really good at the eye roll. It was more in my head that I was doing it, and I was thinking, that's not for me. I'd kind of been beaten down on a few things in my education, and I felt like I wasn't going to be able to bring a lot. So my plan, and I'm kind of embarrassed, and I don't think I've ever admitted this with a microphone on before, but my plan was to marry a rich guy. So that was, right? Yours too. So, yeah. And so that was my plan in the room, and I thought, well, I should probably go to college. And so embarking on my plan, and thankfully I did go to college, because I had some professors who had saw some bright spots in me that I didn't. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that we have blinders on ourselves, and that when you have the gift of having someone else give you some input, take it. So I had some professors that had encouraged me, had seen, I was good at communication and other things, and so it set me on a path then to explore more in education. So I graduated with a psychology degree and a minor in business. And I was thinking about going to more school. I was going either to marriage and family therapy or to be a teacher. And I went away for the weekend, and the hotel we were staying at delivered the Wall Street Journal to our door, and I devoured it. I thought, business is so fun. It's changing. It's a pressure cooker. You have to change and grow, and it's change or die, right? So I was just this is so fun. I want to go into this. So I went back, and I'm how am I going to get into business? And I thought the best way would be to get into outside sales. So I was managing a bakery at the time, a French gourmet bakery with a real French baker. So I have some good stories on that too. But I was managing that bakery, and we had a salesperson that called on us, and I just loved her job. She got to come in, she got to talk to us, she got to help us as a business, show promotions, different things like that. And I was I want to do her job. So I went home over the weekend. I was living in my college town at the time, and I told my dad I wanted to do this. And our company is Hellwig Products. We've been in business for a really long time, and being kind of cute, I said, "Hey, do you have a job in outside sales?" And it wasn't I didn't mean for him to say yes, right? So he said, "Funny you should say that. Today, this week, I had my sales manager say, 'Don't you have a daughter that wants to get into this industry and do sales?'" And so. So it was sort of magical, right? I wanted to get into sales, and Hellwig needed someone. What wasn't magical was outside sales, because outside sales, it will kick your tail, and especially cold calling. And so Carolyn mentioned it earlier. I had to know my stuff like no one else. I was young. I had two things. I was a female, and I was young. So I was going into places that were very uncomfortable, hadn't seen someone from Hellwig for a long time. I also hadn't been trained, right? Someone walked through the catalog one time with me and said, "Here you go." And I went out and made sales calls from that. And so what I got, I had a few teary rides home from sales calls, and I got determined. I think there's always that time where you like decide, am I going to get better at this or am I going to give it up? And I decided to get better at it. So I really worked hard to know my product. I knew it better than anyone else. I knew my programs better than anyone else. I was awesome at follow-up. They're all things that I use now, and I realized that being in an industry that is super dominated by men, I needed to know my stuff really well. And it would make me really grumpy about it because I knew that the gentleman coming to the show with me had done zero prep work, and I had done it all. And there's plenty of times where, even a few weeks ago, this happened to me, where I'm sharing all the information, and the person next to me is a male, and the other individual is looking at them, right? And they'll ask the question to him, I answer it. Like, he does nothing except for just stand there. And that happened even just 4 weeks ago to me. But I think, I could choose to be really grumpy about that, or I could choose to know that I just needed to do more work myself and know that that's going to be out there. So I worked really hard in cold calling, and then from that realized that Hellwig needed work in marketing, so went to marketing and spent a lot of time there. And then from marketing, sales, and then from sales, vice president, and then president. And each time along the way, I did the position and then asked for the title. So it was really hard to say no to me because I had already been doing the work. So oftentimes people, I'm marketing manager, and then I'd say, hey, I should have this title to go with it. And then it was like, oh yeah, well, no one else is doing it. We're not hiring for that. So I'd get the title. So that was how I got to my position within Hellwig. And I always had this dream and knew, so I was in marketing, so I knew like how to stand out is to be different. Mm-hmm. And so there's not in this room, but there were the majority in here, right, as women. But one of the ways that I could be different was being me. When I first came, we would wear like men's shirts, and I felt like I was trying to fit more into that box and be less. I would try to pare down my feminine qualities. Instead, now I embrace them more. So because I saw that would help Hellwig, right, is being different. Another thing that I knew would help Hellwig would be being a woman-owned enterprise. And so that's why I embarked on that journey, which was a doozy, because if you, negotiating is not my best, strongest suit. I learned a lot in that process. And then negotiating with my family, so for my shares. So we're not at a bar, so I'm not going to tell those stories. But I learned a lot in that process. And when I was going through that process, I had negotiated everything. My father and I had worked out a deal. We were signing papers that week, and I had talked to a consultant in that space, and I found out that the way we were setting up our deal would completely disqualify me from ever being a woman-owned enterprise. And so it was like, are you serious? I got to this point, and then I just realized, okay, well, thankfully I found it out before we had signed papers, so I had to go back to negotiating. And from there, we negotiated another deal. We became woman-owned enterprise. It took me 18 months because our company, we just turned 77 this year. We had been 75 when I was applying. Part of the woman-owned enterprise, it really helps you as an organization. You still have to be an organization that supplies good quality products and provides a good quality service, but what it does, it gets you a seat at the table. So a lot of people do this, in the space and are not legitimate. So they really make you work hard to prove that you're legitimate. So I had to go back to documents from our first board meeting, articles of incorporation. There was so much like archiving that I had to do. It was, in some ways, I was really grumpy about that as well, because it was, I was in the middle of this process and I wanted to go much faster, but I learned a lot about my company and the history during that process as well. So I got all my documentation in. We did the interview. It's supposed to be this really long interview, and it was like 15 minutes long because I don't know what happened in it, but the woman interviewing me knew I ran my business. So that felt really good. So I'm in the process of using that certification. There's so much good stuff. And our US government really tries hard to support small businesses. And I think it's so cool. This is the largest gathering of small businesses that happens, is the SEMA show. So, right? So when I'm talking to this room, I think like, if you can take advantage of it, do. I know some of us aren't maybe going to be in that position, so I didn't want to, go too deep into those weeds. But the U.S. government, I was just at a conference, and they are spending billions of dollars with small businesses, and they want to increase it by 15%. So I like that number, and I want to find that business, and I want all of us here in this room to be successful like that too. And so my takeaways for you, whether or not you're headed down that path, is really like, sometimes we're in the messy middle of things, and there are lessons, there's always lessons that you can learn from them. And the sooner I figure out I'm in a learning situation, I feel like as soon as I learn the lesson, like the faster I can get out of it too. So I'm learning that lately, so I wanted to share that. But also, I really would love for all of you in this room too to think about how you're different and unique, and I would love to see how you show up in that way. So I look forward to seeing all of that, and thank you so much for letting me share my story.